Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, May 14th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 108 days, the game against Michigan in 199 days. If you're planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at GratefulGriddleOH.com. On today's show, we're going to be looking at the 5 biggest non-conference games involving Big Ten teams this year. And then we're going to have a little bit of a surprise. Is this really an upset alert make game at the end for you? So you'll get a chance to hear about that a little bit later on. But we're going to be talking about all this with our buddy Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, I think we're just going to run through this sequentially through the season rather than ranking this and upsetting someone because I have the wrong thing as the number 3 biggest game in the Big Ten. But of the 5 games that I had listed as the biggest, clearly number 1 game is Week 1. It is Texas. It is Ohio State. It is going to be on Fox. We're almost positive it's going to be at noon. They haven't officially said that yet, but it sure sounds like it's going to be at noon. But the Cotton Bowl rematch, potential top 2 matchup between those two teams, pretty unquestionably to me, the biggest game in the Big Ten non-conference this year.
A game so big that it could only be held at noon, as some would say. You're talking about 2 of the biggest names in college football, and Arch Manning and Jeremiah Smith, one of whom has lived, has done something and produced some numbers to earn that recognition. But whoever wins this game walks out as the favorite nationally and the favorite in the Heisman race. And so there's a lot going on in this one, and I think everybody's looking forward to it. It would be nice if you could look forward to it all day long and really build up to it instead of waking up and getting ready for it immediately. But again, create the environment that you want because this is going to be a big game. And it's number 1. Tom, I think you could put this number 1 sequentially, alphabetically, in rank of importance, however you want to do it.
As long as you start with Austin, Texas at Columbus, Ohio, yes, you can do it alphabetically as well. Yeah, pretty clearly number 1. Next one, Week 2, another game involving a traditional Big Ten power and a traditional Big 12 power now playing in the SEC. Tony, it's the game so big that a head coach is trying to tailor his suspension around getting to coach in this one. Michigan at Oklahoma, Week 2.
You got 2 programs that are both trying to return to the playoffs, return to real relevance. And so you don't want to start off with a loss. And there's going to be all kinds of things circling with this game, whether it's the Vultures in Oklahoma or the NCAA with Michigan, and neither one of these coaches will want to lose this one. And, Sherrone Moore going back home to Oklahoma where he played. Brent Venables trying to gain some footing in his career. So, I think we're all looking forward to this one. It'll be a fun one. And, boy, when was the last time? Is this the first time these 2 teams have ever played? This is not a rivalry. Tom, while I am vamping, you go to Winsipedia really quickly and let us know how many times the Oklahoma Sooners of Norman, Oklahoma have played the Michigan Wolverines of Ann Arbor, Michigan. 1 time?
One time in 1976. It was in the Orange Bowl. It was one of those years when right when the Big Ten allowed you to play in a game other than the Rose Bowl. It was a second place Michigan team going to play Oklahoma, and they lost 14-6. And Tony, speaking of games where no one scores 20 points, I'm going to give you one fun fact and then read you the scores of the last 6 matchups in the series, and you're going to tell me which the next one is, okay? In the last 6 games, no one has broken 30 points in this series. And I already had a Winsipedia tab pulled up on this one, Tony. Scores of the last 6 games in this series going from 2018 to the present: 13-3, 18-17, 27-7, 10-7, 20-13, and 20-19. Tony, name that Big Ten non-conference series.
Is that Iowa State, Tom?
It sure is, Tony. It is. I have a long history of calling the Egg Bowl between Ole Miss and Mississippi State college football's stupidest rivalry, but man, Iowa State is right up there. I have actually attended this game once in my life, the 2007 game in Ames. That was, Tony, a game that was 15-13 was the final score. Iowa State won the game. scoring 0 touchdowns on the day and kicked 5 field goals with a field goal kicker who looked like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo and whose nickname was Shaggy because he looked so much like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. So yes, so that's really the Iowa State rivalry in a nutshell. But man, this is one of those games that this could potentially be a consequential game for the college football playoff because Iowa State has gotten kind of sneaky close to the playoff a couple times recently, and Iowa was not completely out of it last year as well. This is one that, everyone kind of loves to laugh at this series, but also this could be like a little bit of a data point that the College Football Playoff Committee is talking about.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a quadrant 1 win for somebody. Like this is going to be like a legit win for somebody because I think you're talking about 2 decent teams, and it's been a while since Iowa State has won in Ames. I think 2011 or so, and they've won 2 of the 3, but those have been in Iowa City. And so they're kind of due, but also it's more than it's a huge rivalry game. But like you said, the importance nationally, this could be the biggest, most important game between these 2 teams since 2002, which was won by Iowa State, as we all remember.
That was the only thing that kept Iowa and Brad Banks out of the national championship game potentially, because that was before the Big Ten championship game. That was the year, of course, Ohio State and Iowa both went undefeated in the Big Ten, and Iowa's only loss, I believe, that season was to Iowa State. So yeah, that was a really, really big game that potentially helped swing the national championship, the matchup between Ohio State and Miami that year. So. Next up, a really historic rivalry. This is, did I skip one? Sorry, I skipped one. Next up, not a historic rivalry. Wisconsin at Alabama, week 3. This is I was really excited to be excited about this game, and I still look at Wisconsin and kind of go, this might not go great.
Yeah, this one is interesting to me because can Wisconsin put up a fight? Can they stand up and, stick with, they stuck with Alabama the last time, which I think was 2024, according to the internet. But yeah, it was close until it was a 42-10 final and just everything collapsed. And I think that's one of the questions about the Wisconsin program now is not just can you hang on, but can you not collapse? And really they need to start answering some of these questions better than they have been. So I think it's interesting. I don't know how long it's going to remain interesting, though, because right now I don't have a lot of faith in Wisconsin, even though I know Ohio State better not overlook them when they go there.
Yeah, that was, this is a Wisconsin team that's not going to be great this year, but could sneak up on someone. And the fact that we've talked about 3 Big Ten SEC games already here, it feels like, boy, if the Big Ten goes 0-3 or 3-0 in those are going to be used as talking points throughout a lot of those college football playoff sort of shows and conversations later in the season, where if Ohio State and Michigan and Wisconsin can somehow sweep those SEC teams, that's going to be one very, very strong talking point. And if Texas and Oklahoma and Alabama can sweep those, that's going to be a very different kind of talking point. And right now, the Big Ten kind of has a little bit of a leg up on the SEC. They've won the last couple of national championships. They also have won a lot, I think virtually all of the head-to-head matchups between those 2 schools in the college football playoff. And I think they won at least the whatever the Outback Bowl is now. Michigan beat Alabama last year, and I think they lost the Citrus Bowl last year. These are all very consequential games, Tony, but they mean something if they agree with the point that I'm trying to make.
Do you think things turned when everybody was allowed to pay players? Is that what I'm hearing from you, Tom? Once this thing was allowed to happen everywhere, then suddenly a particular conference lost their upper hand. Is that what you're saying to me, Tom?
Tony, I would never say that out loud. Next up, speaking of speaking of football, Tony, we're going to fast forward all the way to week 8. This is a USC at Notre Dame year, which means the cowards from Southern California can't come up to the upper Midwest late at the end of the season. When it's at Notre Dame at USC, it's always Thanksgiving weekend. When it's USC at Notre Dame, it's always middle of the season. It is week 8 this year. this is a Notre Dame team that's got, they're replacing a bunch of guys. There's going to be a little bit of a step back from last year. Boy, this is a game Lincoln Riley really needs to win this year. Lincoln Riley probably needs to show a little bit of ROI. They have picked it up on the recruiting trail to a certain degree recently, but man, you're going to have to see some results. This is probably, this is one where if USC wins, it certainly bolsters their case to make the playoff. I'm not sure they're going to get there either way. But Notre Dame does not have a particularly loaded schedule this year. So this is going to be one that this is a potentially very big win for Notre Dame's playoff chances.
You mentioned the recruiting. USC has 28 commits right now in the 2026 class, on their way to 106 or so. But yeah, this is always, it's one of the more fun rivalries because on one hand, these two teams, these two programs and their fans really care about it. And so it's kind of like, you noogie on the head, all you guys with your nice little rivalry, it's so fun for you. Good job that you guys have this. But on the other hand, it's when you see like a couple years ago, Notre Dame's beating the heck out of Caleb Williams when that shouldn't have happened, where you see some of these inexplicable games with the choke job or the Bush push. Like there is a lot, admittedly, there's a lot of history and a lot of fun between these two programs. And we've seen some great games, and I love when both programs are in it. And I think USC is trending well, but maybe that's because they're not on the field. And so we'll see if they can continue. If these trends continue, Tom, we'll see what happens.
Yes, the USC fans putting up 2. Is it V for victory? No, it is 2 for too soon to tell how this USC team will do this year. Notre Dame, the rest of their schedule, I mentioned it. They start at Miami, and then they have week 2 off, and then week 3 they play Texas A&M. And so you're going, boy, this is a murderer's row. And then the rest of the schedule is Purdue, at Arkansas, Boise State, NC State, USC, at Boston College, Navy, at Pitt, Syracuse, and at Stanford. So the road trips are at Stanford, at Pitt, at Boston College, at Arkansas, and at Miami. So it's fine, but it's not incredible. I mentioned off the top of the show, okay, that's your 5. Here's one that I think is a little sneaky. We're going to go back to week 1, Tony. Montana State at Oregon. We watched some of Oregon's non-conference games last year, and they were a little bit of a slow starter last year, and they had some offensive line stuff they had to get sort of sorted out. But they did not beat Idaho by a whole lot last year. And Idaho lost 38-7 to Montana State last year. Montana State ended up going 15-1, lost in the FCS championship game. I'm just saying, keep an eye, monitor this space, because if this is a slow start to the season for Oregon, as they had last year, where they didn't look right for the first couple of weeks, this is not a team you want to have on your schedule week 1. Montana State's replacing a bunch of guys. They have a new offensive coordinator. I think they've got a new quarterback. They had a very, very good veteran team last year, and you're kind of replacing some guys, but they kept their head coach. They didn't lose a ton of guys in the portal. This feels like one where Dan Lanning's talking to his AD and going, "What are you doing to me? Why would you do this? You get no credit for it, and there's potentially some real downside there."
No, Tom's not saying, but if it happens, he's going to tell you so.
Absolutely. In that case, I was in fact saying yes.
So, Tom, if you would also like to just say it, that way you don't have to.
Listen, I don't want to use the word guaranteed. However,
will they be caught looking ahead to Oklahoma State? Probably not, but you wouldn't need to, because again, it's a season opener, but are the Ducks going to be up for it as much as they should? Because you mentioned that game last year, and they were fortunate to get out of there with that win, and they were fortunate the week after that to get out of there with the win against Boise State. So, slow starts aren't necessarily anything new for Oregon unless they're playing in Columbus.
Yeah, that's one of those things where you really, I'm sure this seemed like a great idea at the time, but it's like all those teams that scheduled North Dakota State non-conference, and then it's like you get no credit for winning this game, and if you lose, then you lost to an FCS team. There are people that will do like FCS upset drafts. I would keep an eye on that one for they're not going to be a favorite. It would be an upset. They're probably, I mean, I haven't looked, and that does not seem like a game that's going to have an early line out. But man, if that's a 10, 14 point line, that wouldn't be surprising, where it's like, yeah, that's closer than you'd probably think for a, last year's number one versus an FCS team, because the gap is not as big as you might think there. So there you go. The 5+1 biggest games, non-conference games for the Big Ten this year. Going to be a really, really interesting season as they sort of get all that stuff sorted out. This is maybe the last year those non-conference games are going to really, really matter in a way that they might not if that all ties in much more to conference records in the future. They're still sort of sorting that stuff out, but this season should be a really, really entertaining one. And it all starts, as we mentioned, with that Texas game just 108 days away. We will be there covering that one. We will be there covering fall camp before that. We'll be there covering Big Ten Media Days before that. We will be there covering the June camp season before that. We will be there for all of that for you at BuckeyeHuddle.com and YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.